Ryan here with Ray's latest. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world of baseball today, especially in Tampa. Pete Fairbanks, the club declined his club option for 2026. It's a bummer for a Rays fan. He's third in team history in saves. He's been around for a while. He's the team leader for the MLBPA, kind of the spokesperson in the locker room. He's been around forever. He's kind of been the staple in the Rays uniform, and it's really going to hurt to see him in another uniform next season. But I do completely understand the move coming from Neander in the front office. From a fan perspective and from a player relations perspective, it does hurt, and it's a questionable decision. But from the front office and the money that they owe him, it's I do truly think the 11 million would be club friendly for his market value. I do really believe in that, but I do think that possibly going into year one with the new ownership, I don't know if we're going to see a kind of upgrade in the cap space that's allowed for Neander and crew. So I'm curious to see how they kind of attack this. I do really believe though that choosing to not re-sign Fairbanks and give him that club auction, they do give him the $1 million buyout on his contract, which in term 1 million is better than 11 million cap space wise when you think about it that way. But I think that from a market value standpoint, Fairbanks is going to get quite a lot more in free agency, which I think is good for him. I think he deserves it. He's earned it. Coming off 27 save season, kind of just been that go-to guy for the Rays out of the back end of the pen for the last 4 or 5 years. And I do think that it's very club friendly, kind of going after more free agents. That I do think that Neander kind of had this plan all along, which I think it's why Griffin Jax was traded for in this offseason, or not offseason, but this past season rather. I think they're kind of transfer over to him as that back end guy, in my opinion, because I mean, last season he was pretty good last season for the most part. In the last 10 outings of the season for him, he didn't give up a run, and he struck out 27 in 20 innings with only 8 walks. So the numbers are there and the stuff's there. I think it's going to be more of a closer mindset from him. But I do truly think that he can do it. And I think Neander sees that. And I think that that's a club friendly option to have that cheap of a back end bullpen piece, which I think's kind of just been Neander's thought process all along with this. So, I mean, from a Rays perspective, it does really upset me. I mean, I would love to have seen Fairbanks in a Rays uniform next season, and at least even re-signing him so we could get some prospects or even some more players out of him. So it does hurt seeing him go for free, which I don't think it's ideal, but I like I said, I understand it. 11 million from a Rays perspective is a lot, especially for a closer. And I think that with how the Rays are with their pitchers, with their relievers especially, I think they're going to find that guy to mold him into Fairbanks like they molded Fairbanks into who he was. So I think preliminary Griffin Jax is my guy for that role. And I think that's where Neander and company is going to go with that. So we'll see what they do with a back end perspective. Maybe they sign another guy for kind of cheap from the free agency pool, or maybe pick up a DFA somewhere like they usually do. But I do think Griffin Jax is that guy. And speaking of pickups, the Rays picked up Jake Fraley today, signed him off of waivers from the Atlanta Braves. I mean, in 76 games last year for the Braves and the Reds, he hit 241, had 6 homers, had a 700 OPS. So the stats aren't horrible from an outfield perspective of where we currently stand. Because on our 40-man right now, either is Chandler Simpson, Josh Lowe, Mangum, Johnny DeLuca, Morel, Palacios, Everson Pereira, Tristan Peters, and Ryan Velati that we just signed the other day. So, and getting Jake Fraley added into that mix, just on paper, looking at it, it's might be one of the lowest ranking outfields in Major League Baseball. Other than Chandler Simpson and Mangum are going to hit 300, but from somebody who's usually a corner outfielder is supposed to hit you 30 home runs a year. And you kind of see that out of guys like Acuna and Judge and people like that, where your power guys play left and right field. I mean, even the Astros stick Yordan out in left field sometimes, rather than just a DH. So I think it's one of those outfield where you can get hits, you can get people on base, but from a power standpoint, there's not a guy on that list that jumps out at you and says, yeah, that guy's going to hit you 25 homers. So I'm curious to see why Neander, what he's doing with this, and why Velati and why Fraley are the guys that they decided to pick up, because they're not power guys either. So I'm curious to see if they're kind of planning on maybe moving one of our younger core outfielders that we've had this past season in Sampson or Mangum or DeLuca. So I do think Morel is on that list of people who is going to be gone rather soon. And I think that he's just, or they're paying him too much for how little he is kind of produced for us. So I am kind of, like I said, curious of why Velati and why Fraley were the guys we went out and got so early on in this kind of offseason process. But I mean, like I've always said, I trust Neander, so I believe in what he's going to do, and I trust what he's going to do for the team. So from an outfield perspective, I would like to see Mangum and Simpson as everyday outfielders, and then I would love to see them go out and get a guy to play right field every day, like a Kyle Tucker or a Luis Robert Jr., just to kind of bolster the power front from that perspective. But we'll see what they do with that. It is intriguing why they chose those guys. But in other news as well, for the club today, the roster moves that the Rays had made. So Taylor Walls was re-signed. His club option was picked up for $2.45 million this year, and a lot of people are going to question that. A lot of people are going to be like, "This guy can't hit. He sucks. He's a career 199 hitter." He should have won a platinum glove this year. If he wouldn't have been hurt and on the IL at the end of the season, he would have won the Gold Glove at shortstop over Witt. And I do truly believe he would have been the Platinum Glove winner. I really do believe that. And I think that when you can get a guy like that for $2.5 million a year, who's going to save you 10 runs a year from a shortstop perspective, tandem there with Carson Williams, it's a no-brainer on the pick up the club option there, because somebody's going to pay him. He might not be able to hit at the level that you want him to hit at, but he's the best defensive shortstop in baseball, and you have to pick up that option. And they added a 2027 club option as well. So he's kind of tied with the Rays for the next 2 years if Neander decides to go that way with him, especially in 2027. So I think the 2027 option might be more tailored to if he can actually start swinging the bat a little bit, then we'll see with that option. But I do like adding the club option in 27, kind of to get him away from the arbitration phase to where he tries to get a little bit more money than we have to pay him now. But from a financial standpoint, I do think that $2.5 million is really, really club friendly for a caliber player defensively as Walls is. And also Brandon Lau, they exercised his 2026 club option for $10.5 million. So that's really good news for the Rays. I think it was kind of a no-brainer that I think it was always Fairbanks was the question mark, and Lau getting that club option reinstated and exercised is fantastic for the club, and he's going to be back at 2026, coming off a career year, tied with Chisholm for the most home runs as a true second baseman in the AL last season. So he's going to bolster our offense. He's going to be in that middle part of the lineup all year, barring the injured list. So I'm excited that we're getting him back. Like I said, Fraley was claimed off waivers today as well. Forrest Whitley was selected to the major league roster today. So that's kind of a question mark to me as well. So the stuff is there with that guy. It always has been. He's always had electric stuff. But in 10 games last year, he had a 13.5 ERA with a 2.2 whip, and he only struck out 10. So in 12 innings pitched. So I think from a Rays perspective with Whitley is the stuff's there, and they want him in the system so that we can see the stuff prevail when it comes down to the season this year. because he could also be one of those guys in the back end of the pin as well. Because his off speed and his fastball play at a high major league level, he just hasn't figured out how to put it all together yet. And I think that him being in the Rays system and keeping him in the Rays system will ensure that that happens, kind of like what they've done with everybody else they get. So I think that's why they selected him to the 40-man today. I kind of like it. I know a lot of people have question marks. I've seen a lot of people questioning that move and like questioning the move, but getting rid of Cameron Meisner and Bobby Seymour were DFA'd today. But I I like it. I think that they could make him a premier back end guy out of the bullpen this year, and I'm curious to see what they do with that. But Meisner and Seymour being DFA'd today, I was kind of more shocked on the Meisner front, but him and Seymour also hit right around 200, and Seymour had a really bad first showing. He had a 253 OBP. He struck out 32 times out of his 70 plate appearances that he had. And I get it. He's a rookie. He's just seeing big league pitching for the first time. But I think in the small sample size, and he only walked 4 times in 76 plate appearances. So in the small sample size that we saw from him, the numbers really weren't good. And I think they were worse than expected. So I don't mind that loss. And for Meisner as well, I mean, he hit around 200 too. And just with the load, not necessarily loaded, but a packed outfield room, I think he was definitely the 1-2 go. Either him on a cheap contract, DFAing him isn't the worst thing. Morel, I would like to see go before Meisner, but Morel's contract is a little bit bigger. So you'd kind of want to get something out of him rather than just letting him go and hoping another club picks him up. So I don't mind the move. I kind of saw at least 1 or 2 guys in the outfield room having to go. And I don't mind it being Meisner at the end of the day. And Seymour, that was just he didn't show up when he got his opportunity. And I think his numbers were far worse than people expected out of him. And Bushley Faedo and Stuart Fairchild all cleared waivers, so no team ended up picking them up. So they will now become free agents, which in turn the Rays could re-sign back if they would like, which I don't think that they will. So that's just guys that didn't get picked up off waivers there. So we'll see how that goes. But in other league news, there were some qualifying offers that were tendered today. So Kyle Tucker, Schwarber, Bichette, Framber Valdez, Dylan Cease, Ranger Suarez, Edwin Diaz, Zach Gallen, Shota, Michael King, Trent Grisham, Gleyber Torres, and Brandon Woodruff were all tendered qualifying offers Thursday. So many people, if you don't know what the qualifying offer is, it is where they're on an option for the team, and the team offered them a contract extension or a contract year pretty much for the qualifying amount, which means if they don't re-sign with the team and decide to go elsewhere, that team will in turn get a compensation round pick. So in the draft, there's the first round, and then there's a Comp A, Comp B, Comp C rounds, which are pretty much just, since there's no necessarily trading draft picks in baseball, the way that other teams can kind of get better, more draft picks is if a player they had, say they used a first rounder and drafted a player. Say that player doesn't sign, the following year they get a comp pick. And so it kind of just allows it to even out the playing field, especially if they have guys like, say, Kyle. I don't think I see Kyle Tucker re-signing with the Cubs. So the Cubs this year are going to get a comp pick because he did decide to not re-sign the qualifying offer that the Cubs extended to him. So those are some big names. I would love to see Kyle Tucker in a Rays uniform. He's a Tampa native. I would really like to see that, but I do think that his contract is going to be a little too expensive for the Rays to pay. So I'm kind of curious to see how they maybe get another right fielder or left fielder. And I think Kyle Tucker would be a guy in that position. And I think he does want to play for the Rays, but I just don't think that the Rays will be able to afford him. So I am curious to see where they go. But like I said, I do think Kyle Tucker would be a great pickup because I do not think the Cubs are going to re-sign him, or I don't think he's going to accept their offer. Rather, I think he's going to elect to go to free agency and maybe get a little bit more money from somebody, which I don't think the Rays are going to be that somebody that gives him the money that he wants and well deserves. Because I do think he is a great player, and I do think he's earned everything that he's going to get this offseason. And I just don't think that the Rays have enough pocketbook to be able to pay him that. So I wouldn't mind maybe a Trent Grisham signing either. I do think that he's a good hitter. I think that he necessarily, I don't know if he wants to go back to the Yankees. I think that he could possibly get more money somewhere else with a stacked Yankees outfield, especially with Judge. I do think he might look elsewhere, so that could be another way that the Rays go. Maybe sending him out an offer as well. Maybe possibly getting a trade in if he does re-sign with the Yankees, but I don't think he will. I think he's going to elect to go to free agency. But I do think out of these guys, Bichette's going to re-sign. I do believe. I think Schwarber's going to be back in Philly. Edwin Diaz is another guy that I don't think is going to be a Met next season. I think he's going to elect to go to free agency, and he's going to be the number one guy on the chopping block for anybody to want to sign. I think he's going to be signed for the most. I think it's going to be Edwin Diaz, and it's going to kind of fall in Diaz, and then he's tier one, and then it's going to be like a high tier two where Fairbanks and a couple of those other guys kind of fall in along with Michael King. So from a Rays perspective, I wouldn't mind a Grisham kind of fitting into our outfield there. I think he could really play well in Tampa, and I wouldn't mind seeing that. But I really do want Kyle Tucker, and I do think he wants to play for the Rays. I think just at the end of the day, it's going to be if we can afford him or not, which I don't think we can. So you guys let me know what you think. If you guys think of any corner outfielders that you possibly could want signed in free agency this year, and maybe let me know also any guys that currently on the roster that you kind of want to see gone. I'm kind of curious to see where you guys stand from our own current roster perspective. Let me know what you guys think, and you guys have a good one.